The desert winds of Aridus howled across the crystalline shoreline, sending spirals of fine sand dancing around the diplomatic party awaiting the human vessel. High Curator Vexel adjusted his protective head covering, squinting against the glare that reflected off the salt-encrusted edges of the forbidden waters. Though he had studied the ancient texts detailing the Great Flood for decades, he had never stood this close to an actual body of water, larger than the carefully regulated hydration pools in the capital city of Zorthal. "They approach," Lieutenant Orthal announced, her voice tight with the professional detachment expected of Thal-Zor security forces. She raised her scanning device, the blue light sweeping across the horizon where a sleek vessel appeared to hover above the water's surface. The human craft moves upon the water itself. Abominable. Vexel said nothing, but his inner membranes fluttered in what his species recognized as nervous anticipation. The High Council had debated for 7 cycles before agreeing to this diplomatic mission. The humans had made contact 3 stellar rotations ago, but this would be the first physical meeting on Thal-Zor soil, or rather, sand. The vessel that approached was unlike anything in Thal-Zor engineering archives. Named Aqua Voyager, according to the transmission data. It glided across the water's surface with effortless grace before extending mechanical limbs that anchored it to the shoreline. Its hull was partially transparent, revealing glimpses of interior chambers filled with, Vexel suppressed a shudder, water. "Prepare for atmospheric equalization," Orthal commanded her security team. The Thal-Zor adjusted their breathing filters, their thin nostrils dilating to compensate for the moisture-laden air that would soon assault their desert-adapted respiratory systems. A section of the vessel's exterior slid open, releasing a brief cloud of vapor that made several junior officials step backward involuntarily. Then a figure emerged, bipedal, smaller than the average Thal-Zor, with dark covering on its lower limbs and a loose, flowing upper garment that rippled in the desert wind. "Greetings, people of Thal-Zor," the human called out in flawless Iridian, the formal dialect reserved for governmental proceedings. "I am Dr. Mara Lin, aquatic ecologist and appointed ambassador from Earth. I bring salutations from the United Terran Alliance." Vexel stepped forward, performing the traditional greeting gesture, hands pressed together, then spread wide to symbolize clarity of intention. "The Council of Aridus acknowledges your presence, Dr. Mara Lin. I am High Curator Vexel, appointed liaison for your visit." The human smiled, revealing blunt teeth that seemed inefficient for processing the tough vegetation that comprised the Thal-Zor diet. "I've studied your cultural protocols extensively, but please forgive any unintentional breaches. We humans are eager to learn directly rather than through data transmissions." "Your linguistic adaptation is impressive," Vexel replied, though he noted with scientific curiosity how water seemed to bead on the human skin in the dry heat. Their species was predominantly composed of water, a fact that had horrified many council members during preliminary briefings. Orthal stepped forward. "We will escort you to the designated visitation compound. The council awaits your formal introduction." Her tone conveyed the minimum required politeness, but Vexel detected the underlying tension in her voice patterns. "Thank you, Lieutenant," Dr. Lin replied, seemingly unbothered by Orthal's coolness. "But before we proceed with formalities, I'd like to present a gift, a demonstration of goodwill between our worlds." The human turned and made a gesture toward the vessel. A mechanical arm extended from the craft's side, lowering a transparent container filled with what appeared to be water, gasped a junior official, backing away instinctively. "Not just any water," Dr. Lin explained enthusiastically. "This is purified seawater from Earth's Pacific Ocean. I understand your civilization has a complex relationship with water, but on Earth, our oceans are sources of life, recreation, and wonder." Vexel's scientific curiosity momentarily overcame his cultural conditioning. "You've transported water across interstellar distances?" "A symbolic amount," she replied. Our scientists believe that an exchange of our world's most fundamental elements would foster understanding. Orthal stepped between the container and the Thal-Zor delegation. Such substances must be thoroughly analyzed before being permitted beyond the coastal boundary. Dr. Lin nodded agreeably. Of course, safety protocols are universal concerns. What happened next would be recorded in Thal-Zor historical archives as the first transgression. As the security team moved to secure the water container, Dr. Mara Lin turned, walked calmly to the edge of the shoreline where the crystalline salt formations met the lapping waves, and without warning, dove headfirst into the waters of Aridus. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Junior officials scattered, several emitting the high-pitched keening sound of extreme distress. Orthal's security team raised their defensive implements, though they had no protocol for this particular situation. One Elder Council observer collapsed, his breathing apparatus whirring frantically to compensate for his shock. Vexel remained frozen, his scientific mind struggling to process what his cultural conditioning screamed was impossible. A sentient being had willingly submerged itself in water, the destroyer, the ancient enemy that had nearly eradicated their ancestors. Moments later, Dr. Lin's head broke the surface. She was smiling, her hair plastered to her skull, water streaming down her features in a way that made Vexel's inner membranes contract with instinctive horror. "The water temperature is perfect," she called out cheerfully, "much warmer than Earth's oceans." "Exit the Forbidden Zone immediately," Orthal commanded, her voice cracking with an emotion rarely heard in Thal-Zor security forces. Fear? The human complied, walking up onto the shore as water poured from her clothing. The Thal-Zor delegation maintained a distance that would have been considered insulting in any other diplomatic context. "I apologize if I've caused distress," Dr. Lin said, though her expression suggested she wasn't entirely regretful. "On Earth, swimming is both recreational and practical. I thought a demonstration might help bridge our cultural differences. You have violated our most sacred prohibition," Orthal stated flatly. "The Council must be informed immediately." Vexel, recovering his composure, added more diplomatically, "What you have done is unprecedented in our recorded history. Dr. Lin, no Thal-Zor would willingly immerse themselves in uncontrolled water." The human's expression shifted, genuine concern replacing her earlier enthusiasm. "I've made a serious cultural error, haven't I? My briefings indicated water was sacred but taboo. I thought demonstrating its harmlessness might help." "Sacred?" Vexel couldn't help his scientist's curiosity. "An interesting interpretation. We revere water as one reveres a destroyer god, with fear and distance, not fellowship." As they spoke, Vexel noticed something unexpected. The junior officials, after their initial shock, were now watching Dr. Lin with a new emotion visible in their postures, curiosity. She had entered the destroyer's domain and emerged unharmed, smiling even. It contradicted everything their history had taught them. The emergency council session lasted well into Aridus's long night. Voices rose and fell like the forbidden tides as officials argued over the appropriate response to the human's transgression. The most conservative faction, led by Elder Kruvex, demanded immediate expulsion. "This creature has defiled our waters and mocked our most sacred prohibitions," the elder intoned, his ancient voice crackling with indignation. "The texts of dryness explicitly forbid contact with unregulated water sources." Across the circular chamber, Vexel stood to address the council. "With respect, Elder, the texts were written in a different era. The human's action, while shocking, offers unprecedented research opportunities. For millennia, we have feared water instead of understanding it." "Understanding?" scoffed Kruvex. "What is there to understand about the substance that nearly eradicated our ancestors? The Great Flood is not merely history, it is warning. Lieutenant Orthal, required to attend as security chief, stepped forward. The human presents no immediate physical threat. However, her ideas could destabilize our cultural foundations. The debate continued for hours until the High Chancellor raised her ceremonial staff, demanding silence. "Bring in the human," she commanded. Dr. Mara Lin entered the chamber, now dressed in dry clothing that approximated Thalzor formal attire, a gesture of respect that did not go unnoticed. She stood in the center of the council circle, calm despite being surrounded by beings who viewed her recent actions with horror. "Dr. Mara Lin of Earth," the Chancellor began, "you have committed an act that violates our most fundamental taboos. What say you in your defense?" The human straightened her shoulders. "Chancellor, honored council, I offer my sincere apologies for causing distress. My action was meant as a demonstration, not a desecration. On Earth, humans have learned to work with water rather than fear it. We dive into it for scientific research, for pleasure, and sometimes simply for the joy of experiencing its embrace." Murmurs rippled through the chamber at her choice of words. Embrace the destroyer? Inconceivable. Our historical records indicate that early humans also feared large bodies of water. Dr. Lin continued, "Many Earth cultures have flood myths similar to yours. But over generations, we learned to swim, to build vessels, to explore the depths. The oceans that once threatened us now provide food, transportation, and even recreation." Vexel found himself nodding slightly, earning a sharp glance from Orthal. "While I respect your cultural prohibitions," the human concluded, "I believe there may be knowledge our species can share about coexisting with water. The Aqua Voyager contains technology and expertise that could benefit Thalzor without compromising your safety or values." The Chancellor was silent for a long moment, her inner membranes visibly pulsing with thought. "Your transgression cannot be undone. Human, however, your perspective intrigues us. The Council will deliberate further." As Dr. Lin was escorted from the chamber, Vexel caught her eye. There was something in her gaze, not arrogance or cultural superiority as some council members had suggested, but a genuine excitement, as though she had discovered something wondrous that she was eager to share. The Council's decision, reached after another full cycle of debate, was unprecedented. Dr. Mara Lin would be permitted to remain, under strict supervision, to conduct limited demonstrations of human aquatic technology. High Curator Vexel would serve as scientific liaison, with Lieutenant Orthal providing security oversight. The human's vessel, the Aqua Voyager, became an object of cautious fascination. Positioned at the edge of the crystal salt shoreline, it represented everything the Thalzor had been taught to fear, and yet it also embodied the technological advancement their scientifically minded culture admired. One full cycle after the first transgression, Vexel found himself standing at the vessel's entrance, his breathing apparatus adjusted to maximum filtration. Behind him, Orthal waited with 2 junior security officers, all visibly tense. "Welcome aboard." Dr. Lin greeted them, leading them through an airlock that adjusted to Thalzor atmospheric preferences. "I've modified this section to reduce humidity levels for your comfort." Vexel appreciated the consideration, though his scientific curiosity was already focused on the transparent sections of hull that revealed the waters below. The vessel floated partly submerged, its lower chambers extending beneath the surface. "This is the observation deck," Dr. Lin explained, leading them to a room with transparent flooring. "From here, we can observe the underwater environment without direct contact." Vexel's inner membranes fluttered with mixed fear and fascination as he forced himself to look down. Beneath them, illuminated by the vessel's lights, spread an alien landscape of undulating plants and darting creatures. Colors he had never imagined existed in nature rippled through the darkness, blues and greens that had no equivalent in the desert palette of Aridus. "Impossible," he whispered. "Our sensors have never detected such biodiversity in the forbidden waters." Your sensors likely never looked, Dr. Lin suggested gently. Fear often prevents discovery. Orthol, who had been maintaining a professional distance, reluctantly approached the transparent floor. These life forms, they survive in the destroyer. Not just survive, the human corrected. They thrive. Water is their home, just as the desert is yours. For the first time since her arrival, Dr. Lin saw genuine curiosity replace fear in the Thalzor expressions. The slight widening of their large eyes, the subtle shift in their breathing patterns. "I would like to propose an expedition," she said carefully. "A controlled dive to explore what lies beneath the surface of your world." The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the soft hum of the vessel's environmental systems. "Impossible," Orthol stated finally. "No Thalzor would willingly submerge in uncontrolled water, not even to discover truths about your own planet, your own history," Dr. Lin challenged gently. "My preliminary scans have detected structures beneath the surface, artificial structures that predate your current civilization." Vexel's scientific training overrode his cultural conditioning. "Structures? You imply a previous settlement?" "I can't confirm without closer investigation," she replied. "But yes, the data suggests architectural remnants approximately 7,000 years old, roughly corresponding to the time of your Great Flood legends. The implication hung in the recycled air between them. Could the Thalzor ancestors have once lived in harmony with water, before some catastrophe drove them to the deserts and instilled a cultural fear that lasted millennia? The proposal required another council session, this one even more contentious than the last. Elder Kruvex and his faction declared the idea sacrilege, but a younger contingent of officials, including several prominent scientists, argued for exploration. The deciding factor came unexpectedly from the archives. Vexel discovered ancient glyphs that depicted Thalzor-like figures interacting with water, not fleeing from it. 7 cycles after Dr. Lin's arrival, authorization was granted for a limited exploratory dive. The conditions were strict. Only Vexel would accompany the human, with Orthal monitoring from the vessel. The dive would be brief, focused solely on investigating the alleged structures. The preparation was extensive. Dr. Lin modified human diving equipment to accommodate Thalzor physiology, creating a sealed suit that would protect Vexel from direct water contact while allowing mobility. "The most important thing to remember is to breathe normally," she instructed as she helped him into the apparatus. "The suit will maintain your atmospheric requirements, but panic can affect your respiration." Vexel's inner membranes fluttered visibly beneath his translucent skin. "I am not experiencing panic," he stated, though his biometric readings suggested otherwise. "This is scientific inquiry of the highest order." Dr. Lin smiled, but didn't contradict him. "Of course, just as my ancestors conducted scientific inquiry when they first developed diving techniques." Orthal, overseeing the preparation with visible disapproval, interjected, "The Council's authorization can be revoked at any sign of danger. Curator?" "Understood, Lieutenant," Vexel replied. "But some knowledge is worth risk." As they prepared to enter the water from the Aqua Voyager's diving chamber, Dr. Lin placed a gentle hand on Vexel's suited shoulder, a human gesture of reassurance that the Thalzor found oddly comforting despite its foreignness. "We'll descend slowly," she said. "The structures are approximately 30 meters down, beyond the thermocline." Thermocline? Vexel's scientific curiosity momentarily overrode his apprehension. "A layer where water temperature changes rapidly with depth. You'll feel the transition even through your suit." The diving chamber filled partially with water, a process that Vexel observed with scientific detachment, despite his cultural conditioning screaming that this was forbidden. Dr. Lin entered first, her movements fluid and practiced. After a moment's hesitation that he would later omit from his official report, Vexel followed. The sensation was unlike anything in Thalzor experience. though the suit protected him from direct contact. Vexel could feel the pressure of water surrounding him, supporting his weight in a way that contradicted everything he knew about physical existence. It wasn't the crushing destruction the ancient texts described, but rather a strange, almost gentle embrace. They descended slowly, following a guide wire from the vessel. Dr. Lin moved with effortless grace, occasionally circling back to check on Vexel's progress. Through the suit's transparent faceplate, he could see her expressions, encouraging, excited, alive with discovery. The water around them changed as they descended, growing cooler and darker until Dr. Lin activated powerful lights attached to their suits. What they illuminated stopped Vexel's breathing momentarily, despite the suit's regulated atmosphere. Rising from the seabed were structures unmistakably artificial, curved arches, pillared corridors, and what appeared to be dwellings, all encrusted with colorful marine growth but undeniably architectural in nature. The design elements incorporated motifs similar to ancient Thalzor artifacts preserved in the deepest vaults of the archives. "Impossible," Vexel whispered, his voice carried to Dr. Lin through their communication system. "History, not impossibility," she corrected gently. "Look there, those glyphs." She directed her light toward a wall partially cleared of marine growth, revealing inscriptions in a primitive form of Thalzor script. Vexel translated automatically, his academic training transcending his shock. "The waters rise. We must abandon the ancestral dwellings. May the dry lands welcome us until balance returns." He paused, struggling with implications that contradicted his civilization's foundation myths. "This suggests our ancestors lived here, in the water. Or at least alongside it," Dr. Lin suggested. "Many Earth civilizations built near coastlines for the resources water provides." They explored further, documenting architectural features and inscriptions. Each discovery challenged centuries of Thalzor cultural conditioning. These were not the ruins of some other species, but unmistakably the work of ancient Thalzor, a water-dwelling or at least water-comfortable civilization that had been erased from cultural memory after some catastrophic flood. Their exploration was cut short by an urgent communication from Orthal. "Curator, you must return immediately. Weather monitoring indicates unusual atmospheric disturbance approaching the coastline." Dr. Lin recognized the concern in the lieutenant's voice. "We're heading back now. The structures have remained for millennia. They'll wait for another expedition." The ascent felt faster than their descent, though Vexel noted that Dr. Lin maintained a measured pace, explaining something about decompression protocols that his distracted mind barely registered. His thoughts swirled with the implications of their discovery, a secret history that contradicted everything his people believed about themselves and their relationship with water. As they re-entered the Aqua Voyager, Orthal's usual stoic demeanor had been replaced by genuine concern. "The Council has ordered all personnel to return to the Sand Skimmer cities. Atmospheric readings indicate potential precipitation." Dr. Lin removed her diving helmet, her expression shifting to alert professionalism. "What kind of precipitation are we talking about? Rain? Storm?" "The ancient texts call it the weeping sky," Orthal replied. "It has not occurred in 7 generations." Understanding dawned on the human's face. A rare rain event in a desert environment can be dangerous. Flash flooding, ground instability. We should relocate the vessel further inland. "Impossible," Orthal stated. "The Aqua Voyager must remain in the designated zone by Council decree." Dr. Lin's expression hardened slightly. "Lieutenant, with respect to your protocols, this vessel is designed for water navigation, not to withstand desert flash floods. We need to either move to deeper water where we can weather the storm safely, or evacuate to higher ground." The discussion was interrupted by Vexel, who had remained strangely silent since removing his diving apparatus. "The ruins confirm it," he said, his voice distant. "Our ancestors lived with water, perhaps in it, before the great flood drove them to the deserts. Our entire cultural identity is built on incomplete history. Curator, your philosophical observations can wait. Orthal snapped. We have immediate safety concerns. That's precisely my point, Vexel countered, his scientific mind racing ahead. We've feared water for so long that we've forgotten how to respect its power or utilize its benefits. Dr. Lin is correct. This vessel would be safer in deeper water during a flood event. Their debate became academic as the sky darkened with unprecedented speed. The weeping sky of legend was upon them. Fat droplets of water began striking the vessel's exterior with increasing frequency. The Thalzor crew members on board visibly recoiled from the transparent sections of hull, retreating to the center of the chamber as though the falling water might somehow penetrate the barriers. We have limited options, Dr. Lin stated firmly. The coastal city will be evacuating to higher ground. We can either join them or move the vessel to deeper water. Orthal's communication device activated with an emergency signal. The lieutenant's expression shifted from concern to alarm as she received the transmission. The coastal city's evacuation transports are insufficient, she reported, and the storm is intensifying beyond historical records. Dr. Lin moved to the vessel's control center, activating sensor arrays and monitoring systems. The precipitation is causing rapid runoff from the higher desert regions. Your coastal city is directly in the path of what will soon become a significant flash flood. Vexel and Orthal exchanged glances, cultural conditioning warring with immediate survival concerns. We must assist the evacuation, Vexel decided. Dr. Lin, can your vessel transport Thalzor citizens to safety? Yes, but not through the desert, she replied grimly. Our best option is to take them into deeper water, away from the flood path. The implication was clear and horrifying to the Thalzor present. Salvation would require embracing the very element they had feared for generations. Impossible, Orthal whispered, but with less conviction than before. Dr. Lin's expression was compassionate but firm. Lieutenant, I understand this violates your deepest cultural taboos, but sometimes survival requires challenging our most fundamental beliefs. The decision was made not by philosophical debate, but by the crisis itself. As the Aqua Voyager approached the coastal city, they witnessed the first surge of floodwaters breaching the outer barriers. Thalzor citizens fled in panic toward a higher ground that would soon be insufficient against the rising waters. Using the vessel's communication systems, Dr. Lin broadcast in Iridian, "Citizens of the coastal city, this is Dr. Mara Lin of the Aqua Voyager. We offer emergency evacuation for those unable to reach the high desert. Yes, it means boarding a water vessel, but I promise your safety." At first, there was no response. The Thalzor continued their desperate scramble away from the advancing waters. Then, as the flood surged higher, breaking through secondary barriers, a small group of citizens, mostly those with young or elderly family members who couldn't move quickly enough, approached the vessel's extended boarding ramps. Their expressions showed their internal struggle, generations of cultural conditioning against immediate survival needs. The first to board was an elderly Thalzor carrying a small child, both their inner membranes fluttering visibly with fear. "The destroyer comes either way," the elder said simply. "At least here, we have walls between us." More followed, filling the Aqua Voyager beyond its intended capacity. Dr. Lin directed her human crew with calm efficiency, converting research spaces into emergency shelters. Orthal and her security team maintained order, though their training had never covered this scenario. As the vessel pulled away from the flooding coastline, moving into deeper water where it could safely weather the storm, the Thalzor passengers gathered in the observation deck. Through the transparent hull and flooring, they watched as their city was partially submerged by the rushing waters, a catastrophe reminiscent of their ancestral trauma. Yet something unexpected happened in those hours. As the initial shock faded, curiosity began to emerge. Young Thalzor pressed against the transparent barriers, watching the underwater world with wonder rather than fear. The adults, following their children's example, gradually moved closer to the windows, their cultural revulsion slowly giving way to scientific observation, a trait deeply embedded in Thalzor identity. Dr. Lin, recognizing this crucial moment, began informal educational sessions. She explained marine ecosystems, demonstrated water purification technology, and shared stories of how humans had developed their relationship with water over centuries. On Earth, many children learn to swim almost before they can walk. She explained to a fascinated group. Water becomes a source of joy, recreation, and discovery. But how do you overcome the fear? Asked a Thalzor parent, inner membranes fluttering in what humans might recognize as embarrassment. Even watching you enter water voluntarily makes my respiratory system malfunction. Gradually, Dr. Lin replied. With proper safety measures, education, and positive experiences, fear serves a purpose. It keeps us from being reckless. But when fear prevents growth and discovery, it becomes a limitation rather than a protection. Vexel, who had been quietly observing these interactions, approached Dr. Lin during a brief respite. You planned this, didn't you? Not the storm, obviously, but this cultural immersion. The human smiled slightly. I hoped for an opportunity to demonstrate the positive potential of human-Thalzor cooperation. I didn't anticipate it would come through crisis. Our ancestors knew water, Vexel said quietly. The ruins prove it. Somewhere in our history, fear replaced knowledge. It's a pattern repeated across cultures, Dr. Lin replied. After catastrophes, societies often develop prohibitions that once served survival but eventually limit advancement. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from the vessel's communication system. Elder Crewvex, speaking from the secure High Council chamber in the capital Sand Skimmer City, demanded an immediate report. The Council has received disturbing information. The Elder's voice crackled through the speaker. Thalzor citizens aboard a water vessel. Explain this sacrilege. Lieutenant Orthal. Orthal stepped forward, her posture straight despite her evident fatigue. Elder, I made a tactical decision based on immediate survival requirements. The coastal city's evacuation resources were insufficient. The human vessel offered the only viable alternative to certain casualties. And now our citizens float upon the destroyer, surrounded by it on all sides? The Elder's tone conveyed horror beyond words. They live, Elder. Orthal replied simply. They live because we adapted to circumstances rather than perishing in adherence to tradition. The silence that followed was profound. Finally, the Elder spoke again, his voice slightly less certain. The Council will evaluate your actions once this crisis has passed. For now, maintain the safety of our citizens by whatever means necessary. The communication ended, leaving an uncertain atmosphere that was broken by the unexpected sound of Thalzor vocalizations, something between laughter and song, coming from the lower observation deck. Dr. Lin, Vexel, and Orthal hurried to investigate and found a remarkable scene. A group of Thalzor children, encouraged by one of the human crew members, were engaged in a simple water game. Through the transparent floor section, the crew member had created a pattern of light projections that moved across the seabed below. The children were calling out and pointing when they spotted particular patterns, a game that connected them to the underwater environment without requiring physical immersion. The adults watched with expressions that shifted between residual horror and newfound fascination. One young parent actually reached down to touch the transparent barrier, tracing the path of a marine creature swimming below. Impossible, Orthal whispered, unconsciously echoing Vexel's earlier sentiment. Not impossible, Dr. Lin corrected gently. Evolution, cultural and psychological. Your people are rediscovering a relationship with water that was lost generations ago. The storm continued for 3 full cycles, an unprecedented weather event that transformed the coastal regions of Aridus. The Aqua Voyager became a floating sanctuary for its Thal-Zor passengers, and something more, a laboratory for cultural exchange. By the time the waters began to recede, leaving the devastated coastal city partially exposed once more, something fundamental had changed in the Thal-Zor evacuees. They still approached water with caution. Generations of conditioning couldn't disappear in days, but the blind fear had been replaced by cautious respect and even interest. When the High Council sent transport vessels to retrieve the evacuees, they found not traumatized victims but citizens engaged in active learning. Thal-Zor of all ages were participating in Dr. Lin's improvised water studies curriculum, documenting marine life forms, examining water purification technology, and even, most shockingly, watching demonstrations of human swimming techniques with expressions of fascination rather than revulsion. Elder Kruvex arrived personally to oversee the retrieval, his ancient frame rigid with disapproval as he boarded the Aqua Voyager. He found Vexel cataloging marine specimens with a group of junior scientists. "High Curator," the Elder addressed him formally. "You will answer to the Council for this disruption of our cultural foundations." Vexel straightened, meeting the Elder's gaze directly. "With respect, Elder, I look forward to presenting my findings. The ruins we discovered beneath the Forbidden Waters provide conclusive evidence that our ancestors lived in harmony with water before the Great Flood. Our current prohibitions, while once perhaps necessary for survival, have become limitations to our understanding of our own world and history." "Ruins can be misinterpreted," the Elder countered. "Ancient glyphs can be mistranslated." "Perhaps," Vexel acknowledged. "But the evidence is compelling enough to warrant further investigation rather than dismissal." Their discussion was interrupted by excited voices from the lower deck. Despite protocol dictating that he should ignore the disruption, Elder Kruvex found himself following Vexel to the source of the commotion. They arrived to witness something unprecedented in recorded Thal-Zor history. Lieutenant Orthal, the embodiment of traditional security protocols, was wearing a modified version of the diving apparatus. Dr. Lin was adjusting the final components, explaining the functionality of each part as Orthal listened with intense concentration. "Lieutenant!" Elder Kruvex's voice cracked with shock. "Explain this immediately." Orthal turned, her posture betraying no shame or hesitation. "Elder, as head of security, I must evaluate all potential threats and resources. The human diving technology represents both. I have volunteered to test its compatibility with Thal-Zor physiology under controlled conditions." "You intend to enter the destroyer? Willingly?" The Elder's inner membranes fluttered visibly with emotion. "I intend to gather data, Elder," Orthal replied steadily. "As is my duty." Dr. Lin intervened diplomatically. "The test will be conducted with multiple safety measures in place. Lieutenant Orthal will remain tethered to the vessel and will only descend 3 meters, just enough to evaluate the suit's functionality." The Elder seemed at a loss for words. A rare condition for one who had served on the High Council for over 60 cycles. "Finally," he said, "I will observe this test for the official record." What followed was recorded by multiple documentation devices and would later be viewed by the entire High Council. Lieutenant Orthal, encased in the modified diving suit, descended slowly from the Aqua Voyager's diving platform into the clear waters of Aridus. Dr. Lin remained close, communicating constantly through their connected systems. From the observation deck, Vexel, Elder Kruvex, and dozens of Thal-Zor watched with emotions ranging from horror to fascination as one of their own willingly entered the element that had defined their cultural fears for millennia. Orthal moved awkwardly at first, adjusting to the strange sensation of water pressure against the suit. Then, following Dr. Lin's guidance, she achieved a kind of suspended equilibrium, neither floating upward nor sinking downward, but existing in a state of perfect balance within the water. Through the communication system, the observers heard something unprecedented. Lieutenant Orthal's voice carrying an emotion never before associated with water in Thal-Zor experience. Wonder. I can see everything. Her voice came through the speakers. The colors, the movement. It's not what the texts described at all. The test lasted only 15 minutes before Dr. Lin guided Orthal back to the platform. When the lieutenant removed her helmet, her expression was transformed. The rigid security official had been replaced by someone experiencing a fundamental shift in perspective. Elder, she addressed Kruvex directly. I must report that my findings contradict our historical understanding of water. It is not inherently a destroyer. It is, medium. Or sand. Its danger or benefit depends on our relationship to it. The elder seemed to age visibly as he absorbed the implications. You speak of changing fundamentals that have defined our civilization for millennia, Lieutenant. I speak of evidence. Elder. Orthal replied respectfully but firmly. As a security official, I must report potential threats accurately. The greater threat to our people may be ignorance, not water. In the cycles that followed, Aridus experienced changes that would have been unimaginable before Dr. Mara Lin's arrival. The High Council, unable to ignore the evidence from the underwater ruins or the testimony of respected officials like Vexel and Orthal, authorized a gradual cultural adaptation program. The coastal city, partially destroyed by the flood, was rebuilt using a combination of traditional Thal-Zor architecture and human-inspired aquatic engineering. Rather than fearing the next weeping sky, the new design incorporated water management systems that would channel future floods into reservation basins. Dr. Lin extended her diplomatic mission indefinitely, establishing a permanent cultural exchange center where humans taught basic water safety and Thal-Zor shared their desert adaptation technologies. Young Thal-Zor citizens, less constrained by generations of conditioning, proved especially receptive to aquatic education. One full solar cycle after the first transgression, the High Council formally ratified a new cultural observance, the rite of the first dive. In a ceremony attended by representatives from both species, High Curator Vexel, now elevated to the council himself, addressed the gathered crowd. For generations, we defined ourselves by what we feared. He began. Water was the destroyer, the enemy, the forbidden element. We built our civilization on dry land, engineering remarkable technologies to avoid that which covers most of our planet's surface. He gestured toward Dr. Lin, who stood respectfully among the human delegation. Our visitors from Earth showed us not just different technology, but a different relationship with the natural world. They reminded us that fear, while sometimes protective, can also limit discovery. The ruins beneath our waters confirm what we had forgotten. Our ancestors once knew how to live in harmony with all elements of our world, not just the dry lands. Elder Kruvex, who had surprised many by supporting the new cultural initiative after initial resistance, added his own perspective. Tradition without understanding becomes mere superstition. True reverence for our ancestors means honoring their complete history, both their achievements and their adaptations to catastrophe. The ceremony culminated in a demonstration that would have been unthinkable a cycle earlier. Lieutenant Orthal, now heading a new division called the Aquatic Security Force, led a team of volunteers in a synchronized dive into the specially constructed training basin. They wore minimized versions of the original diving apparatus, developed through collaboration between Thal-Zor and human engineers. As they moved through the water with increasing confidence, Dr. Lin joined them, demonstrating more advanced techniques. The gathered crowd watched not with horror, but with fascination as water, the ancient destroyer, became instead a medium for cooperation and discovery. Later, as the formal ceremonies concluded, Vexel found Dr. Lin observing the sunset over the waters of Aridus from a newly constructed viewing platform. Your mission has exceeded all projected outcomes, Doctor. he noted, using the formal scientific phrasing that came naturally to him despite their now familiar relationship. She smiled, the expression now familiar to him despite the physiological differences between their species. Cultural exchange was always the primary objective. I just didn't anticipate how profound the exchange would become. You challenged our most fundamental fear, Vexel observed. Many would consider that reckless. Perhaps, she acknowledged. But I saw something in your people from our first meeting, a scientific curiosity that ran deeper than cultural conditioning. You were ready to rediscover your relationship with water. You just needed a push, a dive. Rather, Vexel corrected, attempting the human humor form called wordplay that Dr. Lin had been teaching him. She laughed, the sound carrying across the water's surface. Exactly. Sometimes we need to dive past boundaries rather than merely skirting their edges. The Council has approved the next phase of underwater exploration, Vexel informed her. We will document the full extent of the ancestral ruins. Orthal has already selected the security team to accompany the expedition. And you? Will you join us beneath the surface again? Curator? Vexel's inner membranes fluttered in what Dr. Lin now recognized as thoughtful consideration rather than fear. The water still feels alien to me. Unlike sand, it resists and yet yields simultaneously. But yes, I will dive again. Some discoveries are worth the discomfort of challenging one's nature. As they spoke, lights began to illuminate the waters near the coastal city, a new installation of underwater observation points where Thalzor citizens could gradually acclimate to proximity with water. In the soft glow, both human and alien observer could see young Thalzor pressing their hands against transparent barriers, their large eyes wide with wonder rather than fear as they watched marine life forms move through their natural environment. Your people are adapting remarkably quickly, Dr. Lin noted. We were always adaptable, Vexel replied. We simply forgot that adaptation works in multiple directions. For millennia, we adapted by avoiding water. Now we adapt by understanding it. As darkness fell over Aridus, the underwater lights created pathways of illumination across the once forbidden waters. To the Thalzor observers on shore, it might have appeared that stars had fallen into the depths, creating constellations beneath the waves to mirror those above. In the coming cycles, those lights would guide a new generation of Thalzor explorers, not away from water, but into its embrace. The destroyer had become the frontier. Fear had transformed into curiosity, and an ancient civilization had rediscovered a part of itself long submerged beneath waves of cultural prohibition. Dr. Mara Lin's mission logs would record it as the most successful first-contact cultural exchange in human diplomatic history. The Thalzor archives would mark it as the beginning of the aquatic renaissance. But for both species, the true significance lay in the simple truth that understanding often begins when we dive past the boundaries of our fears into the depths of the unknown.